Who's next? We got somebody lined up.
Ocean has been waiting patiently, and I think he's back now.
Oops, I just booted him.
Yeah, it would be a continuation. He, I guess, disagreed a little bit with the way Alex was presenting the argument.
Okay, I edited him. Mr. Ocean, you've been here before.
I have. I was the polytheist that showed up that one time.
Yeah,
a few weeks
I
ago.
don't have fond memories of your name. I knew the reason. Okay.
Anywho, yeah, my disagreement with how the previous people were kind of defending this was this. I actually like the question that you're putting forward, the sentence. I think it's a good question or a good sentence or a good example to kind of combat with, because it's necessary to address if somebody's going to be trying to hold.
And can I just so I know, you said you're polytheist or you're an atheist or what? What was it?
I'm polytheist.
Polytheist.
Multiple gods, yes. So, yeah. That's the reaction I usually get.
Well, yeah, but I'm intrigued. I mean, on one hand, I'm glad you're a polytheist, so I can question you. But on the other hand, I don't want to be glad because you're a polytheist, because that means you're lost. So I'm kind of torn.
I know. I think monotheists are more lost than us, though. All right. Okay. Anyway, we can get into that in a little bit if you want to. I just want to quickly kind of address this then, because I'm a moral non-realist. So my response to the question, go ahead and ask the question just so I can So I can
or the statement
at all, or the statement.
Yeah, let me see if I can put it in there again. Hold on a sec. There we go. Well, come on, here it is. In fact, I'll put the article link in there too. You can go through, because there's variations on that statement. Believe it or not, I have a grid at the bottom. For example, it's always morally wrong for anyone to murder. Yeah, there's variations, you know. But anyway, the main one I use is this one, and right here. Okay. It is always wrong for anyone to torture babies to death merely for their personal pleasure.
Okay, and my statement would be, as a moral non-realist, that the statement is malformed essentially because you're saying morally. Malformed? Well, you're saying morally wrong, so that is not matching up with what my position would be.
Okay, well, I'm curious. You say it's malformed. In what sense is it malformed?
Because it assumes morality in my position. My contention is that morality is not a thing.
So it assumes morality. Okay.
Right. Because it says, is it always morally wrong?
Yeah. So it's not even a valid question because there is no morality.
Right.
Okay. So then you're assuming there is no morality.
I provisionally hold that position. Okay. Now that's when we get.
You would have no problem with someone torturing a baby to death merely for their personal pleasure.
I do.
Why?
Well, it goes against my personal beliefs. I do have an ethical structure that I adhere to, and that has to do.
You do?
Right.
But you're a moral non-realist.
A moral non-realist, not an ethical non-realist.
Yeah.
There's a subtle difference.
Okay.
So, you can build a system of ethics that is based on what you personally value.
Yeah, you can.
And from that perspective, you can have kind of a subjective morality if you really want to get into it. But it's based on my perspective. So the idea is that there isn't if my system of ethics can be built purely based on my perspective, that's all there is to me. There's no objective standard outside of me, which is what Andrew was talking about earlier.
How do you know there are no moral truths, objective moral truths?
It's a position that I hold provisionally because it hasn't been demonstrated to me otherwise.
Okay.
Now, if it's demonstrated to me otherwise, then I'll change my position. Okay. But so far it has not.
I'd have to back up.
Sure.
Because I would back up to a different topic to come back into this, because there's a foundational topic that we're assuming is the case in order to have this discussion.
Right.
Because what we're doing is assuming the laws of logic in order to have a discussion.
Or we're assuming morality. We're not necessarily assuming the laws of logic here. Well, we are, but I don't disagree with you. We
are assuming those laws.
Right. We're assuming moral law.
I can show you that your polytheism doesn't work when we assume the laws of logic.
Honestly, my polytheism isn't figuring into this. But
I'm trying to show you that by that, if your polytheism is there, and you have different gods, you can't have a single source of the laws of logic, which would mean your polytheism is false. And if your polytheism is false, then it would
we got
imply
into this last time.
then it would imply that there's a single being who is God. And if there's a single being who is God, then it would imply an absolute moral standard. Then your moral non-realism would be falsified.
There's no system of polytheism that assumes more than one author of the laws of logic.
Are all the beings?
That would be a straw man.
No, it's not. I've thought this through.
Well, I know you may have thought it through, but you've thought it through with wrong information. There's no polytheist that assumes that the laws of logic are a collective creation.
I didn't say that there were. I'm just saying that it's a problem. See, this really is an important issue.
Okay.
If you have, I don't know how many gods you believe in.
Several.
How many do you? Okay, let's just say.
I don't cap it. So
Okay, can I just say 10? Is this a representative number?
You can say 10, 100, 300. Doesn't matter.
Okay,
I just say there are multiple gods. Multiple is pretty much where I stop.
Okay, are these multiple gods equal in their scope, their ability, or are they different?
They would be different.
Okay. Is there a single supreme being who's God? A more powerful one than all the rest of them?
I guess they would be varying in power. According to the Norse pantheon, Odin is the wisest of gods.
Oh. Okay. Look at the light came on. Okay.
Ding. But if you want to get to like how the universe was created and stuff, I also hold that there's an entity or a non-entity called chaos that the universe would have sprung from. And from there you get the laws of logic, and from there you also get the gods. So there is one source or one author of those things. But
okay. So you have a non-falsifiable belief system.
As do you.
No, but mine is.
Yours is falsifiable. You're the first Christian I've heard to say that.
The Christianity is falsifiable.
Maybe Christianity as a whole?
Christianity as a truth religion.
Example of how you would falsify it? I guess you might say that like if a prophecy was wrong or something like that.
Just provide the crucified body of Christ. Now, someone might say you can't do that. Well, maybe not. Maybe I could. But if there was a tomb that was discovered that had inscriptions inside of it, this is Jesus the Messiah, and it had all kinds of articles and things, and it was him, and it talked about his disciples saying certain things. I mean, and then it had crucifixion wounds in his bones and things like that. I mean, that'd be pretty tough to get over.
Right.
Okay. And so the idea is that it's falsifiable within reason. I mean, there's no absolute proof for things unless it's mathematics and logic.
Sure.
But a sufficient thing, we'd find something like that, then you could demonstrate that if you demonstrate Christ hasn't risen from the dead, then Christianity has been falsified. Okay, so it is falsifiable.
By the same token, if you discovered that the origin of the universe was something that wasn't chaos, my system would be falsified as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by that. But you see, the thing is that if you're going to get into the issue of the laws of logic by which you are arguing, because you're assuming a universal absolute set of logical absolutes.
Well, I believe in universal uniformity.
Well, uniformity is just another way of saying you believe in induction.
It holds with the laws of logic as well, so you can.
Uniformity is a thing of physics.
Oh, without uniformity, the laws of logic go all kinds of different places. But
no. The laws of logic are abstractions. The universe is not.
No, but so is uniformity. Uniformity is also an abstraction.
Uniformity, the concept, is an abstraction based upon the laws of logic. So you still have to presuppose the laws of logic in order to have the idea.
I think they support each other. I don't know. Maybe it's circular. I have no idea.
So the laws of logic are prior, because you must assume the law of identity so that you can understand what uniformity is. You don't assume uniformity without the law of identity. You assume law of identity to be able to recognize uniformity. And uniformity requires certain conclusions out of deduction, because you have to say uniformity within the universe, which means you have to use induction in order to do this, and you're presupposing the laws of logic in order to do this. Okay. The reason this is important is because you can't have the universal laws of logic, which are abstractions, in a multi-God universe without a supreme mind being the author or the necessary precondition for these universal laws.
I said earlier that the universe would have come out of chaos, that's where it would be a random collision, basically. So the laws of logic, the laws of the universe, all those things that people apply fine-tuning would have come out of that event.
Are the laws of logic chaotic?
They are order resulting from chaos.
Order resulting from chaos. How do you know that?
That's something I hold provisionally. Give me something that's against it, and
No,
we'll talk about it.
you're holding it by faith.
Yes.
Okay. So
Right, and
another
my
thing
faith
not
is provisional.
falsifiable.
I want to clarify that. My faith is provisional. If somebody gives me something that
I am.
is against it, then we can examine it and talk about it, especially if it's proof. If we have some kind of verifiable
Are the laws
thing
of
that
logic
my beliefs are, then I
the
have to
laws of
change my beliefs.
are
Go
the
ahead.
laws of logic abstractions?
The laws of logic abstractions. Sure.
Okay. Are they universally
It's based
true?
on observations.
Are they universally true?
So far.
Are they dependent upon our space and time for their validity?
Are they dependent upon space and time for their validity? Maybe.
So where you go, they can change. If you're next door to my neighbor, they might change.
Oh, if you go outside of the universe, they might. That's where it might be. That's where I'll be uncertain.
Wait. How do you know that would be the case?
I don't.
Because
I just said might.
what you're saying is that the laws of logic would then be dependent upon the existence of the universe. If we're outside of it, then it may not be true. So then you're saying that the laws of logic are properties of the universe. There's problems with that.
Mm-hmm. What's the problem?
Properties are measurable. Like here, this is not the best example. My cell phone just happens to be sitting right here. It has certain properties: hardness, blackness, mass, and all of these can be measured. And the properties reflect the essence of something. And so when something is related to the physical, which properties of the physical, as in the universe, it's measurable. The laws of logic are not measurable. Therefore, they're not properties of the universe. They're independent of it. So your statement outside the universe isn't true.
That doesn't follow to me.
Properties exist because of something.
Right.
Properties are measurable.
Mm-hmm.
The heat of something, the mass, not the weight, the mass
you
of
can
something.
check the laws of logic.
You can't measure the laws of logic.
You can test them, which is, I guess, how you would measure them. Like,
how do you test them?
By trying to create a situation in which they're not true. But it's mainly through thought experiments, because they're.
So what you're saying is you're trying to use logic to refute logic.
I mean, maybe that's not a great idea.
So it's not a good idea. So you're self-refuting at this point. You see, I'm trying to show you.
Here's my assertion. My assertion is that all the observations that we have built the laws of logic on, because the laws of logic are abstractions from humanity based on our observations in the universe. So if you go outside of the universe,
that can't be the case.
It can't be the case.
Where do you observe?
That's what they are, as far as I'm aware.
Where do you observe the law of non-contradiction, which is an abstraction?
They're based on observations. They're not observations directly.
So they're based on your experience.
Yes.
Okay. So your experience says one thing, and my experience says another. Which one is true?
And that's when you get into like transcendental idealism and all that jazz.
This is why what you're saying doesn't work. Okay. The laws of logic are not dependent upon our experience, or not dependent upon our location, or not properties of the universe. They're universal abstractions.
They're culminations of observations, though.
No, they're not.
But let's assume, for the sake of argument, that laws of logic apply in all possible worlds, meaning outside the universe, inside the universe, wherever it is you want to put it. Let's assume that for the sake of argument and continue. I'm happy to go there.
Okay. We'll let this go for now, because I want you to understand, though, I will fight to the death on this one if need be. They're not based on observations.
I'm willing to give it to you for the sake of the conversation.
Okay. And because they're not based on observations, they're independent of us. And because they're not properties of the universe, they're independent of the universe. So therefore, the laws of logic are independent of our existence and independent of the existence of the universe, yet they are universally true abstractions, which require a universal mind. That means there's an absolute mind out there. If there's an absolute
I see why you're doing this.
If there's an absolute mind, there's going to be absolute morals. Your moral non-realism is falsified now.
What if the absolute mind is a moral non-realist?
Then he would have to also be a logical non-realist.
Why?
Because logic is the reflection of the perfect mind of this being.
Right.
And what is right and wrong by intention of the heart, because this is a mind that is alive. Then the intention of his heart, let's use male gender, the intention of this perfect being's heart must be, because it can't be illogical and self-refuting and self-contradictory, must be proper. And therefore all motives would be perfect and proper, that becomes a standard of what is right and
You
wrong.
just the word proper is a subjective term, so I don't. What do you mean by proper?
Proper, it would be, let's just
Like, does
say,
he have good manners at the table, or like?
let's just say kind of, I'll have to beg the question a little bit, or use a bit of circular reasoning in that his mind would be the standard that is right, because it's his mind. Why? Because he's absolute.
You're right, that is circular.
Yeah. We have no way. But you see, here's the thing. There's no way to get out of that. It's ultimately, and I call this the terminus. At this point, I call it the terminus. What I mean is, we can't go any further. There is no logical way to progress beyond this. God would then be the standard of absolute truth as well as morality, because both would emanate from his mind and his character. Therefore, your moral non-realism doesn't work.
Well, I mean, it works if I just get rid of the circle. You just say that the ultimate mind is a logically consistent being. You can have a logically consistent being that just doesn't care about morality at all. Like, it's not even a thing to it.
You can? How do you know that?
I mean, it doesn't seem necessary. Even as you described it, it's still not necessary.
Really? To a logical being who would know all possible logical truths about every issue of action would say there is nothing moral?
Yeah.
And so then
I could do that.
So then it wouldn't be moral, and he wouldn't have any moral right or wrong statements about torturing babies to death merely for someone's personal pleasure. It wouldn't be a moral issue for this absolute true God, would it?
Right. But we could suppose a mind that simply doesn't care about the actions of humans.
Okay. So since we have a God who exists, and the laws of logic, which are reflections of his mind, are within us, then there is an interaction we have within him, and we are thinking, for lack of a better phrase, his thoughts after him. Where does our objective moral standard come from? But an objective being. Where do our laws of logic come from? From an objective being.
You're saying the laws of logic came from God?
They are reflections.
So God invented them, or?
No, the reflection of his eternal mind. There was never a time when he was not existing, but he always was. He didn't invent the laws of logic. They're just part and parcel of his essence.
They're like an effect of God to you.
Yeah, for better. Yeah, I think that'll work for now. It's an effect, a proper.
I mean, that's fair enough. It's kind of like, so, and in that same sense, you also can apply goodness as an effect of God's existence.
Right.
On top of that.
Right. You see how this doesn't fit in your worldview? But yet it's logical.
I can imagine the mind that is logical yet evil as well.
And is evil self-refuting, self-contradictory?
Well, I mean, we're talking about goodness. If you take the same thing and just reverse it and say that, well, you have a God that is perfectly logical and everything, and then he decides to say, well, I really do enjoy torturing babies. Like, I just really like to do that. So that's why he creates babies, so he can torture them. You know what I mean?
It would be evil then to say something untrue about him. To assert.
I don't know if that addresses what I said.
Well, I'm trying to skip ahead 2 steps. By asserting a statement about God.
Which is going past what my argument was. But, all right,
I'm going to show you something.
Okay.
There is such a thing as evil. If you can assert a truth or a statement that's not true about God and his character, and then he doesn't deal with that, then he himself, you say, is evil. God could be evil. But evil means that he's doing what is contrary to his own nature.
No. Okay, yeah. That's the problem is that we're dealing with different ideas of what evil is. So, like, if you're defining evil as against God's nature, then no, God can't be evil, obviously.
There you go.
Right. But I'm looking at evil if you're going to say that it's absolutely immoral to torture babies, well, if God's opinion is that it's totally groovy to torture babies, then does that make torturing babies good, or does that mean that we have a God that's not really worthy of respect?
Well, what you'd be saying here is, if a square can really be a circle, then should we really believe in squares and circles?
You can have a logical God that just has a pure enjoyment of torturing babies. That doesn't seem mutually exclusive to me.
Who says you can? You do.
Yeah, but you haven't said anything against it, really.
Well, I'm just trying to show you that evil is ultimately self-refuting, because it's self-contradictory. This perfect logical
in this case,
mind,
it wouldn't be evil.
a perfectly logical mind would not be self-contradictory. Evil would be to do one thing and then do the opposite.
All right, let's say that the God thinks that torturing babies is good, which is what I said earlier. So to say that he's evil, like you not torturing babies, that's evil. So
what you're doing is offering out of your imagination.
Yeah. Which I think is what you're doing too, if we want to get really into it.
On the contrary, we've worked from something you and I both agree exists, the laws of logic. We've worked through them logically to show they're not properties of the universe or based upon us. There must be a universal absolute mind. And I'm showing you that there's an absolute standard out there. You're trying to offer evil, which is ultimately, okay.
I'll point out that I gave that to you to
ultimately
continue the conversation. I don't actually agree with that, but.
Well, but if you're going to offer me evil as an essence of what God is, you're ultimately offering me the same being that is now self-refuting, which isn't what I'm saying.
No. I changed the wording on that. I want to point out that I did change, because I recognize what the problem was according to how you were interpreting the word evil, and changed it to just a different goodness. Like we have goodness from God. It's just that the goodness that God represents involves torturing babies for fun.
Well, if that was the case, then you would have to say from your perspective that it's a morally good thing to do.
I would say from my perspective it's not. I would disagree with God in that situation.
Oh, so then you would say then, from your subjective experience and preferences, you know better than God.
Yes. Which, you know.
Which is problematic because now you're saying what truth really ought to be and what he ought to be.
I do disagree with a lot of God's commands in the Old Testament. Namely with respect to stuff like homosexuality, tattoos, all that kind of stuff. So, or wearing two pieces of fabric that are different.
The tattoo thing has to do with the culture and the time that's different. You don't understand very much of that. The homosexuality thing goes against the created order and ultimately is an assault on the Messiah. That's a theological perspective we could talk about, and statistically it's harmful.
But I still disagree with them. Like, so in the universe that we're in now, I can provide those as examples.
Wait a minute.
With God.
Mr. Moral Non-Nihilist, all you're doing is disagreeing. You're not saying it's right or wrong.
Right.
Okay. So it's not right or wrong if I rob you and point a gun at you and shoot you in the leg and take your stuff, rob you. It's not right or wrong, is it?
Defend myself against that.
Okay. So you have no right or wrong, but yet at the same time, you do.
I hold values. Right.
You what?
I hold values. I think that protecting the earth is something that's favorable.
Ought others do that?
Do others do that? Ought others do that? To me, to me, they. That's the thing is, if you want to view me as the authority, then yes.
So you believe that others ought to behave in a moral way that you think is right?
If you view me as the authority, yes.
No. Your perspective. Don't you see what you're doing?
I am the authority over myself.
No, you just said others ought to do it. You're saying there's a moral authority over them.
Right, and I qualified that, I think, 3 times. That if you view me as the authority, yes.
I'm not viewing you as the authority. I'm saying from your perspective.
In order to make that true, what you said, you would have to view me as the authority. If you're not viewing me as the authority, then no.
Then it's not true. Good.
Right.
If it's not true, then it's not true that they ought to take care of the earth.
Sure.
Okay. So
I'll bite the bullet hard on all of this. So, yeah.
So what you're doing is just refuting yourself at every other step.
No. How is that the case?
Because you say one thing, then say another. You say they ought to do it,
consistent
but
the entire time.
ought not do it. No, you have not.
Yes,
you said they ought to not treat the earth that way. Then you said there's no reason that they ought to.
All right. When you asked me, I qualified. I'm going to do 4 times now. If you view me as the authority, it's going to be yes. Right. Yeah. So I didn't contradict myself.
You said if you're not the authority, you are or are not. I understood that. But I don't consider you to be the authority. If you were to say you are the authority, then you're saying there's a moral ought that everybody ought to obey based on your moral authority. That's absurd. If you say there is no moral authority, you're not the moral authority. It's just your opinion, but there's no moral authority. But yet you're also saying they ought to treat the earth a certain way. Then you're saying there's an ought that everybody ought to obey.
I can make arguments to kind of try and convince you and say, like, look, doesn't this appeal to you as well?
You're not hearing what I'm saying. It's not an argument about why it's right or wrong. I'm showing you that you're being inconsistent in what you're saying about yourself or about this issue.
Where's the inconsistency? Because I'm saying
if you say that people ought to take care of the earth,
according to me,
if it's according to you,
right,
your opinion is that they ought to do it. It's just your opinion. There is no necessity for them to abide by your opinion.
Right.
So therefore, there's no ought to them in actuality, only in your own mind.
Exactly.
All
How
right.
is that inconsistent?
No, hold on.
Okay.
And so
All right,
there is no ought in existence, then is there?
Not outside of me, no. Like
So then-
outside of humanity, there's a
outside of
collective
yourself.
ought within humanity that you might be able to try and qualify. If you look at the whole of humanity and say, well, we evolved this way, we have these behaviors, and these things seem to be consistent among humans, so these are a good thing. I would to back this up, I would argue that if our ancestors were ants, we would have a completely different moral set. So to argue that there's an objective morality I mean, the only way that you could make any sort of appeal to it would be acting this way is favorable to human culture. And but even then, you're building a system of ethics. You're not actually appealing to an objective morality. Go ahead.
Ocean, you keep saying this, and that you don't believe that morals are a thing, but I cannot find any definition or reference to the word ethical or ethics that doesn't tell me that it's morals.
Well, the difference is that an ethics would be a system of morals. We can use the word. Is a system of morals that is.
Come on,
Hold on.
bro.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Okay.
You're done. You just said morals don't exist, but
Sure.
ethics are morals.
Let me complete the statement before you jump on me like that. Okay. All right. So, if we're going to be using the word morals, an ethics would be ethics. A system of ethics would be a system of morals.
But
If we're just using the synonyms
morals
that are from the human perspective, that it's not an objective standard. What I'm disagreeing with ultimately is objective morality, and we can go with a subjective form, but I say as soon as you build a subjective model of morality in the universe, you're going with non-realism, which is what I would agree with Slick on this.
Ocean, morals don't exist, so you can't use that in your definition of ethics.
Okay, then I can simply say actions that are favorable or non-favorable, harmful or non-harmful. And
So
what is favorable and unfavorable? I mean, we'll go to how I say it. Well, how I say it, I don't use the word morals. I said morals in order to appease you. Now, with what I would see as a system of ethics is a system of where you build a system of actions that are favorable or unfavorable to different people. And people have different opinions on what is favorable and unfavorable.
So you're using favorable and unfavorable rather than good or bad.
Right, as I like it versus I don't like it. And if you want to try and imply morals to that, you can, but it's not objective morality anymore. It's something else.
And we shouldn't be having a discussion with you about what is right or is wrong, because you're admitting there is no right or wrong.
Exactly.
So the fact that you're arguing about this is an inconsistency again on your part.
No. Because I can say that, look, this idea of objective morality, that there's an absolute of morality across the board, is incorrect, while still advocating for certain actions being favorable towards human culture.
The issue of favorability about what culture is what that's called logically is begging the question. You're assuming the ends is the proper goal to begin with, and that's arbitrary.
Well, here's the
truth
difference.
is not established out of arbitrariness.
I see kind of what you look. The difference is that culture changes, so different actions are going to be favorable at different times. So, and with what you're arguing is an objective morality that is unchanging.
There are standards of objective morals because you believe in justice. You have a sense of justice.
Do I?
Yeah. Have you ever shaken your fist at somebody driving down the road that cut you off? Have you ever been objective, whatever it might be, that you felt there's been a sense of wrong, a sense of injustice that's occurred?
They have committed an unfavorable action to me.
Okay.
I didn't enjoy it.
So it's not unjust.
What do you mean? Like, what do you mean by just?
Justice has to do with the law.
Okay. I mean, I believe that, humanity should have certain laws as far as a favorable structure.
And if the laws are arbitrary, then justice is arbitrary.
Sure. Like when it comes right down to it,
you
there's no
believe-
right way to build a legal system. When it comes right down to it, you can.
Well, we're just going in circles now.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, you're arbitrary about what you think justice is, morality is, everything else.
No, I'm not willing to recognize that there's some objective standard outside of humanity. Humanity is
don't
doing
have
the
to.
best of what we got, which is
Yeah.
essentially
Then
our
don't
interaction
complain.
with one another and what we can see is hurting or not hurting others.
Yeah. Well, that's just another arbitrary standard that you're saying based on hurting or not hurting. You're assigning a moral value to it and don't realize you're doing that.
I saw my audio levels adjusted. Is that, am I cut off or?
I don't know.
Okay. Oh, you can still hear me. That's good.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if that was, we were ending there or not. Anywho,
You're
I guess
assuming
I'll just
moral value with certain things. You're just arbitrary. You're assuming that the ends is the value that we ought to go by. Ought has to do with morality in this context.
we can turn it around. I can argue that divine command theory is really arbitrary as well.
Except it's not divine command theory. That's not the Christian perspective.
There's a lot of Christians that do hold divine command theory.
Well, yeah, but they're wrong. That's not what it is biblically. Okay.
Okay. Well,
All right,
yeah,
we need to wrap this up.
Sure, we can wrap it up.
But enjoy the conversation, though.
Absolutely, I did too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you ever sat down with a realistic nihilist and chatted?
Yes, he and I know each other.
Yeah, the two of you talk, and you're two peas in a pod, I believe. So.
We don't like each other ultimately. Well, we've gotten in a lot of fights. I do like him ultimately, but we have gotten into some scuffles. He's very not religious. I am, so we have some disagreements around that.
I would enjoy listening to a conversation of the two of you talking. Anyways, thanks for stopping by.
Sure thing.
Oh, Andrew Rappaport, how much of that did you listen to? You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying. I listened. Actually, Ocean, he's been in before, and I think we've chatted with him before.
Yeah.
Nice enough fella, but it's I don't know. And I know that this will come off wrong, but I feel like it's like nailing jelly to a wall.
I don't know.
I thought I reasonably demonstrated that he's inconsistent. Now, he wouldn't agree with that, but I thought I had.
Well, but one of the things I think a difference, though, Matt, between him and the other two people you spoke with is notice the difference of someone that listens. The first two guys you spoke with were in to prove an argument, and Ocean was actually dialoguing, understanding what you're saying, listening, and interacting with what you're actually saying.
Yeah, it's a good conversation.
Yeah, and that's the difference.
Well, the other ones were good conversations too.
Though they were, the issue being is they weren't engaging with what you were actually saying, and they were.
No, maybe I wasn't communicating myself properly.
No, I don't think it was that. I think it was they don't want to hear. At least with the first gentleman, Amadeus or whatever. He when you were trying to explain what your point was and why you were explaining it, he just started laughing over you and talking over you, and then when you made the point, it was like, well, you're lying, Matt. Those are just tactics to avoid having to answer. That's what that is.
Yeah, there's a bit of a problem there. Yeah.
But I think that the difference is when you have a more honest discussion, you get a more productive one, and I think that's what we saw with Ocean.